Good evening.
Good evening.
And I've got a surprise guest who's sitting next to me called Caroline Stevens. Hello, Caroline.
Sitting next to you. How does that work then when we're miles apart?
Metaphorically. Now, the subject tonight is children are being taken from their parents at an alarming rate. And if you look through, if you get a local propaganda magazine from your council and look through it, 9 times out of 10, you'll see loads of adverts for foster care. Now, okay, sometimes children are taken away from their parents for positive reasons, although it's rare. But now children are being taken away from their parents for the slightest minor excuse. So to me, it's a crime. And when there's a crime, there has to be a motive. So Caroline, what is the motive of this crime? Over to you.
Follow the money. It's always got to be follow the money. And this has been planned for probably decades to break down the family unit. And that's all courtesy of the Tavistock Institute, Stonewall, all these non-governmental organisations which have been funded by the global elites. Because what we have, even if we don't have much money, is we've been used to having our families around us, and that makes us strong. Yes. How many people have said, we didn't have much money when we were young, but we had our family around us and we had a good time. Now, some people have lots more possessions now, but they're no happier. And in actual fact, the statistics are quite staggering as to how unhappy children are. There was a survey done in 2019, so just last year, and the children, they are deeply unhappy. So whether that's to do with social media, pressure from exams, pressure at school, but there's no doubt about it, having more money for some people has not translated into a happier lifestyle. And when we talk about money, you know, I've been interviewing Barry from Australia today.
Excellent.
And Barry has been, he's one of the people who talks about the monetarization of our birth certificates, because that was the reason why we have been registered from birth. Our birth certificates are effectively an equity fund. And it's a hard concept for a lot of people to grasp. In fact, a lady on my timeline who actually works in the City of London really does not grasp the situation at all and believes it's an opinion and not a fact. So even the brightest will, that's right, Monty, it's a stock bond. And your birth certificate has a number. That number is traded on the stock exchange. And every time you come into contact and get new numbers, like your national insurance number, I guess your driving license, all different reference numbers with your dealings with the state, that also, those numbers are also traded on the stock exchange. So when the children, and it is a complicated subject, and I don't profess to be a specialist in any shape or form, but when children are taken in, people think, well, why would the councils do that unless they've got a really good reason? Because councils haven't got much money. That truth is, that's not the case at all. They get the money from your birth certificate. And it was interesting interviewing Mike today. I interviewed him last weekend and part 2 this afternoon. And he just pointed out, well, the councils are managing to get passports on behalf of your children. And he was also saying that 3 of his children that have been taken into care have not been seen since November of last year. So that's an 8-year-old and 2 11-year-olds, courtesy of Nuneaton Social Services, have simply disappeared into the ether. So can you imagine what it must be like? I mean, many people watching are parents. Can you imagine if you have a crossword with your child and they go into school and say, oh, mum's been shouting at me. And then they say, oh, well, what else has she done? Oh, well, she hit me once. Right, that's it. And there's actually nothing, Mike was saying today, there's actually nothing to suggest in any rule that you are not allowed to give your child a slap, which is what many of us had when we were growing up. And we, that didn't mean to say we weren't a civilized society. And I'm not advocating, so please don't start sending me emails. I'm not saying that you should do it. I'm not here to pontificate about family matters at all, apart from the fact that children have gone into school, have also told lies for attention, or they've just been a bit upset and said the first thing that's maybe gone into their head. And then as soon as they make contact with somebody at that school, and I thought it was just somebody in a position of authority, but chatting to Mike this afternoon, it seems like other children can shop you, if you like, to the school. And as soon as the teacher in charge of pastoral systems in the school comes into contact with this situation, they're on the phone. They're on the phone to social services because they have to. It's part of their remit. A potential situation, they have to register it, and that's for their own protection. I feel quite confident that that is the reason why they have to protect themselves. Because if matters go undetected and something does happen in the future, the school could be held liable. So social services get involved. Social services come to the school, see your child. You don't know anything about this. They, provided the child is, well, I think it's 7 or 9, according to one of the people I interviewed today, provided they're that age, they can be interviewed without you being present. Now, I find that extremely sinister. The Victoria Columbia cases of this, where they're sort of dredged up. Look at this case. Look what happened. Well, I mean, she wasn't 7 or 9, was she? She was much younger than that. And that didn't stop. The social services, they had lots of warnings about that case, and they did nothing. But it seems to be, yes, they can't. I don't know whether when the serious abuse, as Monty's just saying, the serious abuse side, I don't know whether they're afraid of the parents or perhaps the child isn't one they're particularly looking for. There's no doubt about it. They are looking, a lot of very pale-skinned children that do get taken into care. It's almost as if it's like you almost feel as if the elites have got a catalogue and that they want a certain type of child. So who knows? But that's figured quite a few in a few cases that I've uncovered.
Well, when you look, what gets me though is when a child is genuinely abused and gets killed by their parents, the social services seem to sort of miss it, which I find a little bit odd. So they seem to be hot on people that are innocent and not hot on people that are the minority that are guilty. But I think that, but something like what you're saying, I mean, I have not worked in the civil service, but I've worked alongside the civil service. I've worked, I worked on a freelance basis for a council. And I said, well, I don't want to work for a council. Their architect's department. What's the rate? Oh, yes, that's a nice rate. I think I will work in the local council. This local council, not my one, I hasten to add. And what you find is that nobody makes a decision and they all pass the buck and pass responsibility. As long as my desk is clear and it's passed on to, and they all work to like robots. So they've all got to show that they've done what is correct. And if the nasty stuff hits the extractor fan, everybody's going, and it's like a sort of dominoes going round. I don't know if you've ever had any dealings with the civil service, Caroline, but it's frustrating because everybody's passing the buck and nobody makes a decision, and everybody's fearful that, well, it wasn't my fault, it was that department. And to my shock, when I was working in London on a project which we was working beside the civil service, they were really aggressive to other departments. We're better than them. And it was childish. It's absolutely. So I think a lot of that aggression has actually gone into, the sort of social. Well, they are the civil service. Let's face it. They're a civil servant. But when you think about it, what you were saying about children taken into care, we've all been teenagers, and when we first enter into our teenage years, all teenagers know everything, don't they? I mean, I knew everything when I was a teenager, and I'm sure you did as well. And of course, you begin to really dislike your parents. And I hate you. You won't let me listen to my radio and all that sort of thing. And
well, this is what we're finding is that, as you uncover these cases, a lot of the teenagers are just being teenagers, and they probably feel that they're not being listened to. And then, this is old news. It might be old news, James, but in actual fact, we've now got a situation in this country of over 75,000 children in care. We've never had so many children in care before. And of course, a lot of those parents are unaware of the fact that the councils are actually getting money through the birth certificate system. And of course, it's been kept hidden to a certain extent, because I guess a lot of people will think, oh, it's the parents' fault. I mean, the number of people I've spoken to who have been totally unaware of what happens these days and say, oh, there must be something. And I just think, well, no, actually, it can be they can be looking at your family history. You might have had a medical condition when you were 20. And, you might have I've even come across people who've been divorced from their first husband, gone on to a second husband, and that divorce has actually been thrown at that person in a court case, suggesting that they didn't care about their child enough to stay married to the first husband or wife. So they can pick up on anything. It's happening now, and it's never really been highlighted until we need to highlight it, because these parents need some sort of support network. I guess some people would be embarrassed, and I think it's very, very brave of the people that coming forward to say, no, this is not right. These courts are secret courts. They invent stories. But, you've got people as well who naturally, they've been put through the mill for possibly years and years. Some of their family may have gravitated away from them, not wanting to be associated with these people, even because they always say, oh, there's nothing, smoke without fire. There's no smoke without fire, And I know for a fact, having worked teaching maths to children who've been either excluded from school or in foster care, I know that the foster care homes do not necessarily keep tabs on their children from Friday morning when they go to school till Monday afternoon when they come back. They disappear completely. And a lot of people don't know that. And there's no requirement on the homes to keep tabs on these kids. Not only that, but in a recent report that was just produced just before Christmas, it said that a lot of these homes were actually not authorised homes. And then you've got the foster carers who are earning £250 plus per week to accommodate one child. And I think for some, it's a lot more than that. And you're going to get a lot of parents. I know there's lots of good foster parents, but the cases I'm hearing, these foster parents are not qualified to do this job. Not that the kids should have been removed from them in the first place. And I can speak with experience because I've visited a foster carer's home and I complained to the council, and that's it. Once you complain to the council, you're not going to get any more work. Foster parents can bring these children into their home in freezing cold conditions, dirty conditions, and you have no idea what really goes on.
Well, let's go into history for a little bit. And it's okay, folks. You don't have to make a cup of tea. I'm not going to talk about communism. And that's something that's mystified me is that during the Second World War, I think Britain was the only country which evacuated children from the major cities. I don't think any other country did that. Now, I believe it was in 1940. Now, surely military gets priority for trains, because you always got to transport military equipment, troops. And in those days, the military relied on railways very heavily. And
well, they might be doing again with HS2.
Well, precisely. So why would you spend a heck of a lot evacuating children, which was a horrendous situation, away from their parents? Now, with some children that were fostered out, it did them good. They went into a far better environment than a squalid home where they came from, like in a slum or parents that were generally abusive. But with many children, they've written that it had a terrible psychological effect on them. Because can you imagine when you were young? I mean, you know, I came from a very close family, being dragged away from your parents at a very early age. And it must have been horrendous. Now, and it's something I've looked into. Why did we do it? And they reckon that the amount of child abuse went through the roof. And there's something odd about this evacuation of children during the Second World War. It's something I'm looking into. Coming forward to 1966, there was a play called Cathy Come Home. I saw a recording of that play, part of it, and I've never seen acting quite like it. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it's about.
Well, it's about a woman having her children forcibly taken from her by foster, by the who are the people that deal with taking children away? I can't think of their names.
Social services.
The word. Thanks, Caroline. Social services. And there's a scene, I saw it about 20 years ago. I think it was a rerun when I had a television. And they just showed you the scene of woman, the social services were literally like the SS. Well, they are the SS. And they were ice cold, stone-faced, dragging this woman's children away from her. And I've never seen acting like her. I mean, she should have got, I don't know whether she got the wall for it, but what an actress. I don't know who she was who acted the part of Cathy Come Home or Cathy, but wow. And I actually got a bit of a tear. I'm a bloke, but God, I've never seen acting like it. And apparently it changed a lot of things in our foster caring. I don't know what it did change, but what gets me, there seems to be an agenda. There seems to be an agenda behind this, because why has it accelerated? I mean, do you remember what happened up in the Orkneys in the early 90s?
Oh, yeah, quite a few children were taken away. Yeah, can you remind us about that, please, Chris?
Well, this is from research beforehand, but I believe the social services went in, and in the newspapers, I'm doing this off the top of my head, I think it's about, was it
Chris, are you there?
Caroline, gooey. We seem to have lost Caroline somehow. Now, that was strange, wasn't it? Oh, we're back. Caroline, you still there? You're frozen. Hang on. I'll remove you and then I'll put you back again. See if that. Caroline, you still there? Can you hear me? Caroline? Caroline, can you hear me? I think there's something, a breakdown might be at Caroline's end. I'm not.
Ah, right. I'm back, I think.
Caroline?
I'm back.
That's good. I don't know what happened. There was a breakdown there, but we was talking about what happened in the up in Scotland, the Orkney Isles, and it was around about 1991, and it was spread across the newspapers at the time that the social services went in and they were too heavy-handed, and people were given the impression that there was massive child abuse in the Orkney Isles. It was all over the Orkney Isles, and it's horrendous. And every other parent in the Orkney Isles was an abuser. And it turned out it was all hyped up, and the social services had gone in too heavy. And it's a complete mystery why they went in too heavy, but they took loads and loads and loads of children away, and it caused a horrendous amount of distress. And just think, it's not only the parents who would never forget it. What about the children? Can you imagine being dragged away to strangers when you was 5, 6, or very, very young?
Well,
So
I was
that was.
I was talking to the lady today, and she was saying her grandchild had been 2 when he was taken away, and he was able to feed himself at 2, and he was just about to go into potty training mode, but because he went into foster care, he regressed. Basically, he could no longer feed himself, and in fact, the foster parents were so worried that they were trying to inject water into his throat, and they had taken in the end one of those juice bottles, the ones that they're disposable. You just drink them once, juice in a bottle, and then you throw them away. Well, they prized the top open and filled it with fluid after that. And of course, this bottle over a period of time created cuts in the mouth. So and these were foster parents who were in the 60s handling a 2-year-old. Well, if you were a parent, society frowns on you having children in your 60s, doesn't it? But it seems to be a different set of rules and regulations for foster caring. And of course, I put up a controversial post a couple of days ago. Obviously, it was a controversial post, and said, is it ever acceptable for children to be taken and fostered by 2 people of the same sex? And having interviewed a lady whose 10-year-old went to live with 2 men, and by 16, because he was autistic, he opted to be. He believed then that he was actually homosexual too. So it's the family unit is really, as I said before, if you have no money, you've still got your family. What have you got left? The church is corrupted. The church is so corrupt. They even had celebration to celebrate, staying in the EU, being all the. I mean, the church is totally into globalism, corporatocracy, and so forth. And the church is led by, it's the Jesuits. So it's all about control by the state, and this is where you've got your one world religion, and the people are being controlled. Even if they can't see it, the new Green Deal will whiz in so quickly with losing our cows and a removal of gas cookers and not being able to burn wood in stoves
or coal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you think that all the people say, right, I'm going to go off grid. I'm going to hand in all my credit cards. I'm not going to be tracked. But you start burning wood, and they're going to come knocking on your door.
Oh yes, yes. But the title of this show is "How Much More Will People Take?" Because my belief, and I'll be very careful with my words here, is that certain people that we're not allowed to criticise are really taking the mickey in a funny, in a strange sort of way. Because you think what we've got now, we've got transgender, we've got homosexuality, we've got lesbians, so and they're teaching children it's okay to have two mummies or two daddies. No, it isn't okay to have two mummies or two daddies. And all they say is, oh, well, it's as long as it's in a loving household, it's loving this. And I really believe it, and I really dread this. I've got a feeling that soon bestiality will be a sort of normal thing. Well, you know, if you like an animal, you know, what's wrong? And you'll probably have the Prime Minister with his or her partner who's, you know, sort of outside number 10. We laugh at it now, but that is close, I think.
Well, I believe somebody was saying to me in Hollywood, well, Hollywood has just been showing some films on bestiality. So what they're showing now will come into fruition if we don't stop it in the next few years.
That's right. That's right. I mean, what I was talking about the other night, and I do apologise to people. I did go on a bit because I intended to go on air for half an hour, and I was there for an hour and 3/4 because it got interesting.
Chris, you know, I can't see you, by the way. You know, you're a black screen here. You are in the black.
Am I really?
So I don't know.
Actually, in the chat room, can people see me? Monty, you know, anybody, please? Can anybody see me? Just say hello. No, there's no response yet. Perhaps they can't see me. Strange. Can you hear me though?
I can hear you, but it just means I'm going to be talking over you because I can't see when you're stopping talking.
Hang on. Oh, how's that?
Right. Better? It's you're back. See, yeah.
Well, see the magic. Now I forgot what I was talking about. But really,
but we've just been talking about children and the LGBT agenda. I mean, what people do behind closed doors, that's of no concern to me. But it's the fact that they're taking children from homes with mums or dads, or mums and dads, because they are being taken away from parents as well together, not just single parents, and putting them in a home where it's not a mum and a dad together. So it must be very confusing, and it must it's a stressful event anyway. And of course, children are very, very vulnerable, which is why they need protection. And otherwise, they're not children, are they? So we're supposed to treat them differently.
Well, let's take a step back. Why is the state taking children away? And now it's time to make a cup of tea because I'm going to say something about communism now. So start yawning, you know, but I'll be very brief about it. What did Mao do? He took children away from an early age, and he destroyed the family. Why? Because come the Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976, the children looked upon the state as their parents, not their own parents. What did Stalin do? He took children away from their parents at an early age. Why? Because they looked on the state as their parents. The state is correct. I mean, it's like when we were children, our parents were always correct. You know, my dad knows this, my mum did that, and all that. And when you get a little bit older, you think, well, they're not always correct. But what it is, it's indoctrination by the state, because that's how the state can carry out policies or agendas like UN Agenda 2030. And they can carry out their Colden Ho Kalergi plan without anybody. You mentioned it to people, they go, oh, that. Can I go?
Well, let's be honest. How indoctrinated is our society already? When you had the LGBT week last June, and you could go through the town centre, and every bank would have a rainbow flag in it. There would be a rainbow display in huge numbers of the shops, including charity shops, which is probably not surprising because they're effectively an NGO. So we've had that we're getting that indoctrination from the corporate world, the globalists. They want to annihilate a huge number of the population. So we're going to end up with more viruses that they're just being able to patent before it happens. And so they're making money both ends, aren't they, from big pharma and also through people moving on, I guess.
Well, that's
in a way.
Well, before we sort of go on to the sort of next topic, that's okay. I think we'll round this off with a little bit of a jolly to put a smile on people's faces. And I think that we should look at ways of actually stopping this. Now, let's put it this way, if homosexuality was normal, we wouldn't be here, would we? I mean, civilization would have ended from the year dot. It's not, to me, it's not normal. I haven't really got anything against anybody that's that way inclined, providing it's behind closed doors and amongst consenting adults. That's it. You shouldn't really discriminate against people, but it is not normal. And I once, in the early 90s, when the first, they have Gay Pride Day in London, don't they, when they all sort of march through London. Well, I worked in Longacre in the building that Yogi Bear made the first television transmission.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
Cutting a long story short, I sometimes, because this project was so high pressured, we sometimes worked Saturday morning on it, you see. And I got up and I was really tired out. And I thought it was Friday, see. So I put the old shirt, tie, jacket, on. And there's anyone else sitting on the train. There's not many people. And I realised it was Saturday. But I was working Saturday morning anyway, you see. So I went into work Saturday morning. And when I left about lunchtime, I actually used to get claustrophobia down the deep tube train. So I used to go on the Circle line round to Liverpool Street, then catch a train, overhead rail, home, you see. So I used to walk down to the station and it was heaving with people. I thought, this is strange for a Saturday. What's going on, So I walked the Circle line. The stations are very close together. They're not that far. So I thought, I'll walk to the next station, you see. And I was walking along the embankment. And as I was walking along, I saw these, remember, this is the early 90s, I think it was, late 80s, early 90s. I saw these people all in this sort of leather gear and very effeminate. I was sort of going, what on earth's going on here? I thought, I actually pictured something. I thought I was having a nightmare. I thought, I shouldn't have had that cheese before going to bed, And I got to the traffic lights to cross the road, and there's, this sort of, what they wear, the boots and the leather and bits, and there was a bloke with actual breasts who must have been off, and I was sort of going, like this, and there's two policemen. This would never happen today, standing on the island in the middle of the road, and they caught my eye, and I caught and there's been, I stuck out like a sore thumb. Can you imagine a bloke there in a whistle and flute with a briefcase walking against all these homosexuals and lesbians coming the opposite way with a kind of shocked look on his face.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I'm not bothered what they do. It's just I don't want children of 4 years of age being indoctrinated by this agenda. And I mean, with the vaccinations we're getting today, if it's true what they do put in vaccines, then it's no wonder. That's all I will say. So I think we ought to move on from this subject.
I think we should. All I was going to say is the coppers looked at me and I looked at them and we both burst out laughing because they could see the look on my face. And
they're now doing it themselves. So the times have moved on now, and that's what their vans in certain parts of the country are all rainbow coloured.
And very briefly, I was accidentally listening to Radio 2 a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was Jeremy Vine said Mrs. So-and-so is very upset because her young children can't get to see the Gay Pride March. So it's indoctrinating children.
It is. Well, that's the family doing that then, isn't it? So, but the state would be doing that en masse, and that's what we're finding now in the schools from September, and that just doesn't seem fair on our children. It's not something, if I had children all over again, I would be wanting to withhold my children from those classes.
Likewise. Now, we're going to move on now to do a roundup because Caroline's extremely busy and she posts many more posts on YouTube than I do. And she gets around and she's really working hard. I do admire Caroline for doing this, trying to get the message out to people. So if we could have a roundup, Caroline, of over the past week, when people go on to your YouTube channel, which is Caroline Stephens Seeking the Truth. And of course, we mustn't forget your website now, which I think have I got this on the comment?
CarolineStephens.net.
I've got the old Wix site one. I'm terribly sorry. So I didn't quite catch that. Was it Caroline?
It is a Wix site. It's CarolineStephens.net.
.net. Okay, right. So if you look on to Caroline Stephens Seeking the Truth on the YouTube channel, can you give us a roundup of who you've spoken to this week and to give our viewers a taster of what you've been doing for the last week, please?
Okay, well, on Monday, I interviewed Sarah. That was a part 2. And she's had her 2 boys removed from her by the state in Derbyshire. She's now moved to another part of the country, her and her husband, and both Sarah and her husband had to go to court, have different solicitors, and the solicitors told the parents that, okay, they've done nothing wrong. However, they advised them to destroy all their papers, their court papers, because they wouldn't stand any chance of getting their children back. That was Monday. What a cheery week we're having. Secret courts, yeah. Destroy your papers. So they've got no papers now. Tuesday, I had Sandy Adams, and of course, you and I know Mark Windows. And the previous Saturday, I'd been to see Mark Windows, Piers Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn's brother, talking about climate change, and Sandy Adams talking about the UN Agenda 2030. So she showed all the books that she has been researching. And so I did part 1 and part 2 of the UN Agenda 2030 and what life will be like for us, and the rewilding program for the agriculture. We're going back to nature. We won't be producing much food, and so on and so forth. And we be all out of our cars. We will be tidying our houses with 5G and smart meters. And it's not very, very cheery. And people, it's not a very cheery prospect, is it? But moving out of into high-rise blocks, we're seeing the flooding. And so that was Tuesday. And what else have we done? On Wednesday, I had David came over. He's a Brexiteer, came over from London, and to our film studios here in Wiltshire. And yes, we were talking about the coronavirus and UN Agenda 2030. So this is now, I've noticed now that the posts are becoming quite prolific on Facebook. People are moving away from trade deals and Brexit because they're beginning to realize now that actually that was just a cover for what is really actually happening. And then, so that was Wednesday. And then it's today. I've had Mycom doing part 2 of 3 of his children out of 8 have disappeared, and the police can't get involved. They can't go looking for them. And Beverly from up north, her grandchild's been taken away, and obviously regressing at the age of 2. He behaviour changed, and so on and so forth, and how she fought the system. And Barry from Australia. So yeah, it's been a busy time. Tomorrow I've got a couple more people to interview about their children being removed, and I seem to be getting quite a few inquiries now about this. This is something that I actually really covered first of all with Laura Loudon a year ago now. She came to the film studios up in the East Midlands, and she'd had both her children removed from her in Edinburgh simply because she'd gone to school and told the school, "Oh, be careful, my children might be displaying some sort of if they get a bit emotional, it'll be because their father has." And then the father had already left the house, and that was it. As soon as you mention anything to the school, that's it. Kids are off. Go to court. Go to court on a Friday. The kids have got no bags or anything, no clothes with them, and then you don't see them for days on end. So yeah, that was the start of it. I think really was is interviewing Laura. So Laura, if you're watching, look what you've done.
Well,
look what we've done, I should say.
Precisely. I think that going back to when you're talking to Sandy Adams, she mentioned something very important, which and that is this climate. Global man-made global warming stuff was originated from Maurice Strong, who was a Canadian oil executive. And it's very, very interesting because that really, I didn't know that, and it really did educate me.
That was right going back to, was it 1992? And was that the Treaty of Rome, or was that the Rio Summit?
No, I think it was the treaty. No, you've got me on a dodgy one there. I know it's 1972. And there was a discussion between that was I think Mark Windows has got a recording of it, and is Maurice Strong and Rothschild at a conference, and I'm not sure what that conference was. I think it was Rio, but I might be wrong on that one. But the one in 72, I don't know. I really don't know on that one.
But of course, he spent his final days living in China. So we shouldn't see it as any surprise that our system is going to be like China with its social credit system.
Well, Monty's just come on.
There you go. It was 92, the Rio Earth Summit.
Yeah, but it was 72, wasn't it? The Easter.
92.
Well,
thank you, Monty.
Thanks, Monty. I do apologise. I haven't put all your comments up on the screen. I do apologise for that. And but thank you very much, everybody in the chat room. It's really lively tonight. And well, I think we'll round this up now. And thank you very much for coming on here, Caroline. Please come on next week. And we'll see you all very, very soon. And thank you, everybody. It absolutely, it's terrific. And good night.
Good night. Thank you.